Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for joining us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. About 703,000 people take their lives around the world every year. And for every suicide, there are possibly 20 other people attempting one. Besides all this, many more have serious thoughts of suicide. Millions of people suffer intense grief or are otherwise profoundly impacted by suicidal behaviors. Each suicidal death is a public health concern with a strong impact on those around them. But the World Health Organization believes that raising awareness, reducing the stigma around suicide, and encouraging well-informed action can bring down those numbers around the world. In the studio with me is Chief Consultant Psychiatrist at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Aru, Abeokuta, Ogun State, Dr. Aino Oyekomi. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary, for having me.
Let's quickly examine the reasons why people commit suicides.
Okay, suicide is an escape from pain that the person perceived unbearable or unbearable. Suicide, people must know that even if somebody dies by suicide, it's not as if the person if the person had an alternative, the person probably wouldn't do that. And
okay, they would take an alternative if they could see one.
Yes, if they could see one. And then researchers have shown that over 90% of cases of suicide actually had mental health problems that were not attended to or not properly attended to. So the meaning is that if these mental health problems had been attended to, probably we wouldn't be having 1 million persons dying by suicide every year. So there are different reasons why people would die by suicide, because we don't want to say commit, because when you say commit, it's like it's a crime, yes. And it's indeed still considered a crime in the Nigerian Criminal and Penal Code, in sections 327 and 231 of the Criminal and Penal Code, respectively. Now, there are different reasons why somebody might die by suicide. Now, I mentioned that most of them had mental health problems. So if somebody is experiencing some mood disorders like depression, bipolar disorder, some psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia. You know, in schizophrenia, the person might be hearing voices commanding the person to do some things. So, for example, somebody who has schizophrenia is hearing a voice now, and the voice is saying, go and jump off that bridge. That person is not depressed, but that person has a psychotic illness that the person does not know what is real and what is unreal. So the person might actually die by suicide. All other things also that might happen to one and the person might die by suicide include things like some personality disorders, substance abuse disorders. But that's not the only reasons why some people might die by suicide. There are other things, because we have to put it in context. It's usually a combination of factors, because suicide is a very complex thing. Now, there are some personalities that can predispose one to wanting to die by suicide if the person is encountering maybe stressful situations. For example,
we identify these personalities?
Yes. For example, if somebody has a high degree of impulsivity. Impulsivity means that, you know, there are some people that do not think deeply before they
act.
Yes, before they act.
But isn't that a form of mental illness too?
It's a mental health symptom, right? Okay. Yeah, it's a mental health symptom. Because when we say mental health, what do we mean? Mental health is simply using your feelings, your emotions, and your behavior to help you to live a fulfilling life and to cope and deal with challenges. That's just what mental health is all about. So if you cannot think well, then you have a mental health problem. Because, you know, a lot of times people think that it's only people that have that diagnosis that are actually mentally ill. You might not have a diagnosable mental health condition, but you might have symptoms that can predispose you to dying by suicide when other conditions are there. So, for example, somebody who is very impulsive, who has poor coping skills, who doesn't have good problem-solving skills, and that person now facing maybe relationship issues.
Blow.
Yes, it may be a loss of a very, very significant person, or a loss of status, or financial losses, or any loss, or maybe facing even legal issues. You know, or sometimes if somebody has a chronic disability, or somebody is in chronic pain, all these things would combine to elevate the risk of that person actually dying by suicide. So it could happen to anyone. That's the point of what I am saying.
But chronic pain,
yes,
can be dealt with.
Yes.
It can be treated.
Yes.
Not being able to cope,
yeah,
should drive somebody to another person,
yeah,
for help.
But it doesn't really happen that way. You know, chronic pain, facing stressful events, what these things do is that they put that person in a state of dysphoria. Dysphoria means that you are in this state, you feel this intense amount of unease. You are not settled. You are frustrated. You can be restless. You can be sad. So it's like a potpourri of negative emotions. That state is not palatable, and you might call it emotional pain. So when these things happen to people and they are now in that state of deep emotional pain.
What did you call it?
Dysphoria.
Dysphoria.
Yes, dysphoria.
Does this dysphoria cut a person off from reality?
No, not necessarily. You know, we have different degrees of dysphoria. We have different intensity.
Can this person recognize that help can come from somewhere?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes. And dysphoria is something that we encounter daily. I mean, when things don't go your way, you feel frustrated, you can feel, this sense of unease or whatever. But it is when there are other things. For example, if somebody who has depression depression is a mood disorder, so let me not even use that example. Maybe someone now who is in deep financial crisis, right? And the person is impulsive and then is experiencing this deep state of dysphoria. The person might actually die by suicide. But that is not to say that it must definitely happen.
In that way.
That's why we say that it's, health is not the absence of a disorder. It's not the absence of an illness. It is about your wellness. How well are you? So the more, health is like on the continuum, and mental health too is on the continuum. So the more you are tilting towards that negative side, the more your risk of doing things that you are not supposed to do would increase, which includes suicide anyway.
I'm thinking of a situation where somebody who has this kind of problem, has a very good friend whom he or she knows, I can talk to this person.
Yes.
And this person will probably be able to help me or lead me to help.
Correct.
And two, who has a friend who would recognize that I have a friend who doesn't take bad occurrences very well, who gets out of sync when something happens. And because ABC has happened, I'd better checking on that person.
That person. Yeah, it's nice. What you are saying is that there are preventive things that can be done, and there should be some warning signs that people would recognize that, oh, this person might die by suicide. So people need to know the warning signs. So let me start from there, the warning signs. Sometimes it might not be direct, and sometimes it might be direct. There are some people that would actually say, I'm going to kill myself. There are some people that would say that. But majority of persons might not say it that way. They might say it indirectly. So if you hear a friend who you know is probably going through maybe a relationship issue, and the person is saying, there's no hope for me. I'm even tired of this. I'm tired of everything. Can it get better? That person is expressing a feeling of hopelessness. Or the person is saying that, I think I'm a burden on people around me.
That's a dangerous one.
Or I think this world would even be a better place if I wasn't here anymore. Or the person is now putting his affairs in order. or writing a will. I'm not saying that as a young person, if you are writing a will, that means you want to die by suicide. No, but you put it in context. So someone who is going through a significant challenge, now writing a will, now giving out his prized possessions. Now maybe standing aloof, not interacting before. So people around should know that there's something wrong. So those are some of the warning signs. So warning signs can be direct and indirect. And then you mentioned something very, very critical that can help to bring down the rate of suicide. You mentioned somebody should see, somebody should know. So support system or connectedness is very, very, very important. How connected are you to people around you? It might include your friends, your colleagues, if you're a student, maybe your fellow students, your teachers, your neighbors, your club members. So because we are social we are social creatures, yes. And we thrive when we are together. No one is a silo. We are not designed. We are not wired to be able to, do things just alone. We need one another. So the more you are socially connected in a meaningful way, the more it helps. So that if you have all these things, maybe you are depressed, you might get someone that is going to let you know that, okay, there's a way out. Why not go to see a professional? Or maybe you are going through financial distress and somebody offers you an advice telling you to be more prudent or how to, balance your finances, not buying what you don't need. All those little yes, so those little advice. Because, when we talk about support is not only when somebody gives you something. It's not only when somebody dashes you money or whatever. Support can also include validation, shedding different perspectives on a situation. Support can also be, leaning on somebody's shoulders, having a place to cry, support.
Hang on, you said support can be leaning on someone's shoulder.
Yes.
Who is leaning on whose shoulder?
The person who is in distress now.
Okay.
Leaning on maybe a friend's shoulder or a teacher's shoulder or a neighbor's shoulder or anyone that can help. Not just anybody, though. Anybody that can help.
You said something that I really like. You said meaningful interactions, meaningful
yes.
friendships.
Yes.
Because it seems that some people can be among friends.
Yes.
And be alone.
Yes. And now, the dynamics have changed. Family dynamics have changed. Family structures have changed. Even social dynamics now have changed. I mean, when we were growing up, we used to have friends, I don't know if you can recollect your secondary school days, that, you might visit your friends at home, you might, during holidays, you might go to another person. The interaction was real.
Contact.
Yes, we had physical contact. The social texture then, was palpable, was thick, was real. But now, because of this social media thing, a lot of people can have 1,000 friends on Facebook. It doesn't translate to real relationship, to meaningful relationship. So what I'm trying to say is that, you've seen some celebrities. I remember the case of, I think, former Miss USA, who died by suicide.
That was so
tragic.
That was traumatic, even for me.
Yes.
But we need to go on a short break. When we come back, we'll deal with that. Please stay with us. We're going on a short break. We'll be here soon. Welcome back. We're talking about preventing suicide, how you can help to prevent suicide, how your friends can help to prevent suicide. And we're talking with Dr. Aino Oyekanmi. You can call 0808-054-2233 if you have a question on suicide, and you can also tweet at CTV_Mary A. Or write email moalale@channelstv.com. Now, WHO says reduce the stigma. This is the 21st century. Why is there stigma? What is this stigma? What really is this stigma? What do they do to them?
When people are stigmatized, it breeds different things, breeds secrecy. So a lot of times, when somebody dies by suicide in a family, the family members will cover it up because they're likely to be stigmatized in the society.
How?
Yeah. Because people don't understand. They can't come to terms because it's so weird. It's a weird thing to think, how can somebody kill herself, or how can somebody
What I mean is,
kill
do
himself?
they talk to them, make fun of them,
No,
not marry their daughters, or what?
Now, some people believe that for somebody to die by suicide, that means the person must have been in a complete state of, maybe the person could not think at all. And that is now tending towards a mental health issue. Exactly. So because of that, and you know that mental disorders, they carry a big stigma. So suicide is like one aspect, one end result of most mental disorders that are not managed well. So we can understand the stigma. And then, sometimes too, people might think that, it's a sign of weakness. How can somebody die by suicide? I mean, was she weak? Couldn't he have done something, meaningful to help himself? So those things might make some families to cover that act up.
Let's talk about action. The theme for 3 years running is going to be take action to create hope, something like that.
Yeah.
What is so important about action, and what are people doing? What is this action? For me, for you, or maybe for the person who is having suicidal thoughts?
The action is that since researchers have shown clearly, unequivocally, that over 90% of people that die by suicide actually had mental health problems. The action would be that let the stories, let the narratives about mental health conditions, let them be every day. Let us stop stigmatizing mental health conditions. Let people be more aware that having a mental health problem is not a sign of weakness. It's not a spiritual attack. It's not the end of the world. When people begin to see mental health condition from that angle, then you would see that the rate of suicide would drastically reduce. So the action is increase people's awareness about mental health problems. Let people know when it is okay to seek for help. Let people know how to seek for help. Let people know who to go to. Let people understand the warning signs. Let people know, whether your friend or your colleague or your mom or your family member or whoever is around you, we all have our own circles of influence. So let people know.
Let me quickly jump in there and take this call from Ada. Hello, Ada. What's your question?
That's Plateau State. I want to know from the doctor that, is it hereditary? I know a family where the mother committed suicide, the daughter committed suicide. Is it a mere coincidence? And then again, parents can also lead their children to commit suicide, especially this thing that has to do with
Are you still there, Ada?
So I think parents should be very careful. You should extend some. This idea of
Ada, we are not hearing everything you're saying, but I think she's talking about parents being the cause.
She mentioned two things.
Yes, I said parents can be the cause.
Okay, she mentioned two things. Actually, she said, is that heritable? Yes, researchers have shown that there is some degree of heritability to suicide. And it's about 40-something%, that can account for genetic contributions.
How then do you convince people that it isn't a weakness running in a family?
No, it's not a weakness. And this thing is about impulsivity. I mentioned that there are some personality traits that can heighten the risk. So it's impulsivity. So there are some families, or there are some times that one can inherit that high degree of impulsivity.
Okay.
But impulsivity
a behavioral trait.
Yes, impulsivity is something that can be overcome. So it's not a death sentence, really. Yes. So that's one. Then number two, she mentioned parent influencing their children. That was what she mentioned. Yes, parents have a big role to play in this issue, because a lot of young persons, actually die by suicide. Because parents need to understand, there are some parents, especially Nigerian parents, that would think that my child is not lacking anything, so why would she even think of dying by suicide? We go to church every day. He or she knows that if you die by suicide, you go to hellfire, all those things.
Yeah.
So we must start, reorienting them that when somebody is depressed, for example, it might be beyond that person to even have that rational thinking that if I die, if I kill myself, then I'll go to hellfire, because at that time the person cannot think straight. So parents can help their children, by paying more attention to their behavior when they change, all these nuances of, you know your son well, so you should know when something is changing. And if it is a mental health problem, don't dismiss it. Don't hide it.
So if
don't
you
be
suspect
secretive.
it is
if
a
you
problem,
suspect,
take it to the doctor.
Yes, at least go to the doctor. If the doctor says, okay, everything is fine, then everybody's happy. But the problem is, I say, every case of, or let me say most cases of suicide, if the right thing had been done, would have been prevented.
Okay, I understand that parents do a lot of wrong things.
Yes.
Friends do a lot of wrong things. Give us some don'ts. What shouldn't we do?
Now, as a person, don't indulge in drugs. I mentioned that substance use can also predispose one to dying by suicide. Don't do that. Manage stress level very, very well. Improve your coping skills, because it's about mental resilience. It's resilience that would help you, because suicide is like a product of something that is not going well in that person's life, and the person is unable to manage it. So
do we
it's
do
about
this by
resilience.
meditation or what?
Meditation is a type of stress reduction. So, we should have different stress reduction techniques. Whatever works for you. If it is meditation, fine. If it is mindfulness, if it is PMR, which is progressive muscular relaxation, if it is massage, if it is visualization, imagination, there are so many stress reduction techniques. And then problem-solving skills. Increase people's ability to critically think, to be able to think outside the box, people to be more optimistic, to be more hopeful. All those things would increase somebody's resilience. It's about resilience.
How close are we to government decriminalizing suicide attempts?
Yeah, the mental health bill is fast moving, and once it is assented to, once the president signs, then it will address these things, because we need to change that part of the criminal code and the penal code that criminalizes suicide. And the mental health bill, when it is finally done, would address this.
Okay, so it's moving.
Yeah.
That's good. How about murder-suicides? There are some people who die by suicide, but they kill somebody first.
Yeah. It happens too, that's homicide and suicide, yes. Sometimes, when people commit crime and maybe their partner, and they see that, the police is fast approaching or whatever, they can decide, it's like a suicide pact.
Okay,
so
that is a topic for another day.
Suicide pact.
We've got to close.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been so interesting. It's like I sat here for 5 minutes. Thank you so much for being there, and have a lovely day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.